Okay, everybody, we're going to get started right away. I'm not even going to go over the parts because I really have something I want to show you at the end, and my computer keeps running out of space. I think I got to do something with it. So we have Exploring Space. That's the name of our series. Space Stations. Space Stations is our title. And here inside, we have Colleen Sexton, who is our author. And again, she met with somebody named Dwayne, or yes, was it Dwayne? Yes, Dwayne. Okay, as a consultant. So let's get started. Oh, we have our table of contents. And after our 4 chapters, where am I? 4 chapters, we're going to go into the 3 parts of the nonfiction feature, which is the glossary, to learn more, and index. But of course, we always start with the table of contents. Let's get started. Are you ready? Space stations are places where people live and work in space. Space stations orbit Earth. They travel 200 to 300 miles above the planet. So look at that, boys and girls. There's a space station. And look at, there is the astronaut working on part of it, floating in space above the Earth. Do you think you could do that? Would you get out of the space station and go float around? Small space stations are built on Earth. Rockets launch them into space, and there we see a launching rocket. Different than a space shuttle, correct? Large space stations are sent to space in pieces called modules. Astronauts put modules together in space. So, for the big space station, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, it was built in pieces and modules. Everything was sent up, and then astronauts had to go out and put it all together, like a construction worker would do here. Space stations have solar panels. The panels power space stations by turning sunlight into electricity. Why would they have so many solar panels? Collect a lot of energy, right? Because it would probably take a lot. You can't plug this thing in, can't run an extension cord up to the space shuttle. So they have solar panels. They're so much closer to the sun, right? They can collect that sunlight and turn it into energy. Spacecraft dock with the space stations to deliver people and supplies. All space stations have at least one docking port. And there we see the space shuttle connecting to the International Space Station, and they're either dropping off supplies or people. That's how you get out there. Isn't that cool? Space stations have areas where crews eat, sleep, and exercise. Now I'm noticing something about this picture. I have a question for them. Do you know what my question might be? Why is everything white? Space stations have areas where crews work. Crew members do science experiments. They study each other to see how living in space affects people. So look at that. And actually, we're going to talk about somebody who lived in space for a year. Crews study planets and stars. They also watch how the Earth's surface changes over time. Now, this, boys and girls, we're going to talk about, remember we talked about the great space race yesterday? Well, 9 space stations have orbited the Earth. The Soviet Union, they were the first ones to put up Sputnik. They were also the first ones to launch a space station. And I hope I'm saying this, Salyut. Okay, in the 1970s. The first one blasted off into space in 1971. So they were the first. They were the first, but we were the second. So here we have Skylab. That's ours. The United States launched Skylab in 1973. This space station had a powerful telescope. Look at that. Now, the Soviet Union built Mir from 1986 to 1996. Spacecraft from other countries visited this space station. Notice it took them like 10 years to build it. Okay. Why do you think it took so long? I bet you're saying because it's a long trip out to space, right? It costs a lot of money. They have to make the parts and everything. Sure, and the astronauts can't spend a lot of time up in space, unfortunately, like they can do here. There's some changes that happen to our bodies when we go into space. 16 countries came together to build the International Space Station. The first two modules went into space in 1998. Now, that's what we're going to be seeing. And that's actually what Mrs. Nielsen saw, but not in space. And you see the big solar panels, right? Spacecraft delivered the truss, robot arms, and other parts. Crews made spacewalks to put the parts together. Now, really and seriously, how many of you think you can go out into space and do that? I don't know. Look at how big it is. The International Space Station is huge. It's the size of a football field. The solar panels are the largest space objects ever built. Look at all those panels collecting all of that light. The space station weighs about 1 million pounds. The weight makes it drop closer to the Earth as it orbits. Small engines push the space station back up. So our gravity and its weight, it keeps coming closer to us, but it has these little engines in it that push it back up out into space. That's good because we don't want landing on our Durkin Park, do we? Crews have lived on the International Space Station since 2000. Well, now this is the year 2020. So that means that people have been going up there and coming back for 20 years. Long time. Their work will help people get ready to explore other planets. Gee, I wonder who those other people are. Could that be you? I don't know. Would you go into space like this? Then I'd know somebody famous. Someday, a spacecraft might launch a space station to carry people to Mars. Okay, so you'd have to go on one of those and spend years on it. Could you do that? And we're already at the glossary. I'm going to turn off the light because I have some pictures to show you. So, many years ago, not too many years ago, about 4 years ago. Oh, I can't see you. Can you see me? My son went to Brother Rice, and he did this really cool thing where he helped build a robot, and it was a robot that would go into like on a space mission. And we got to go see someplace called the NBL, which is the neutral buoyancy lab. But I'm going to show you some pictures really quickly because we met some astronauts. Can you believe that? It was so exciting. So here's one of the astronauts. Now he's a flight instructor. He does take, he takes the astronauts up in special planes so that they can get used to flying around. Maybe Mrs. Nielsen's having direction problems again. Yep, there. So we saw these really cool planes. They're the flight planes. They're actually from the 1970s. And everybody got to go up and look inside of it. And these are still used today. And the astronauts have to spend a certain amount of time flying around in these little planes all the time. So that way they're always ready to go into space. And that's my family. Here we're seeing one of the ejection seats. So if something goes wrong, they pull the little pin and it shoots them out. And here is the parachute for Scott Kelly. He's one of the astronauts who in 2019, I think it was 2019, came back. He spent a year in space, and he's got a twin brother. And actually, when he came back from space, he was taller than he was when he left. So they were doing experiments on twins. And these are all the lockers for all the astronauts who go there and do their training. Isn't that cool? We weren't allowed to touch anything, of course. And there's our team, our Brother Rice team. And there are some of the more astronauts. And there's one of the planes in the background. It was really cool, guys. It was really cool. This is Patrick. This is the robot that they had that was doing their underwater. We practice underwater because that's what the astronauts do. So they built it, and he's going through a safety check there. And there he is with one of the machines from the NBL. That's the NBL. Now, every day we had to get like they had to check us to make sure that we didn't have any weapons or any bombs or anything like that. There were people from all different countries all over the world that were there with us. And every day the dog would find the one bag, because they would put one bag that had some bad stuff in it, and the dog would have to find it. There is part of one of the part of, gosh, I can't speak today. This brought the astronauts back to Earth. Best as I can do. This is if they have trouble with their oxygen, it's some sort of a chamber that they go into to help them. Here's where Patrick was with all the other kids from around the world, and that is the pool. And inside that pool, it's as long as a football field, is the International Space Station. So the guys can go up in space and work on things in space, because first they do it here. They practice everything here, so when they go into space, they know what they're doing. And you can see that giant, giant pool. Now, I couldn't go down onto the deck, but Patrick did, but he couldn't bring his phone because this is top secret stuff. Here's that crane that puts the astronauts in, because here on Earth with the gravity and their suit is super, super heavy. And so they have to lift the astronauts in and put them into the pool. And then there's a scuba diver that goes with them to keep them safe. But you can see all the parts of the International Space Station. And there's my son, Patrick. He drove, he's the one with the hat. That was his lucky hat, obviously, because he was wearing it all the time. He drove that kind of like you do when you play your video games. And he had a little camera to look at. And there they were over that International Space Station. And then we got to go on to one of the space shuttles there. That's my daughter, Emily. She's playing with all the things. It was a real one, but at the time it wasn't being used. It's not being used anymore. We got to see that where they say, Houston, we have a problem. This is mission control. We got to see some of the rockets. Remember how yesterday we talked about the engines? Look at Mr. Nielsen's a big guy, and look at how little he is. So we got to see all this stuff down in Houston. It was really cool. Oh, there's Mrs. Nielsen, and there's the space shuttle, a real one. That's the one that we were on, and they have it on top of a plane. I don't remember why they have it like that, but they do. And there's the Nielsen family. But that's back to the pool. Now, there was one team that could not go into the NBL, and that was the China team, the team from China, because for some reason they didn't have security clearance. But can you see all of that? That is the International Space Station underwater. We had to get special clearance. We all had to do it. And they go through the hatches and everything, and they're swimming, they're floating like they're going to do in space. Practice everything in the water before they go out. And here's Patrick, and I think this was after theirs, and they were talking about it. Those were the judges. They did very well. And that's the robot. They painted it maroon and orange for Brother Rice colors, but it had to do a couple different functions. It had to do things, and they did very well. It was their first time going to internationals. And then they went the next year and maybe the year after that. Pat was a senior. He went as his junior year and his senior year. But that's him and his two teachers that were over Brother Rice. But isn't that cool? Coolest thing in my life, boys and girls. I'm telling you, if you all want to go into space, I'll support you. I'll do whatever I need to do. I'll be the person cheering, going, yay! That's if you want. Okay? I think if I was to live life over again, I think maybe I'd become an astronaut, believe it or not. I don't know. But I will see you later. You guys have a beautiful weekend, and I'll see you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile. Look at, I'm kind of like a floating head in the darkness. Bye. Happy Friday, everyone.